Unravel the power of modal verbs for advice. Hello there, language enthusiasts. In today's episode, we are revisiting an important topic: modal verbs for advice. These unique helpers in English grammar add flavor to our speech, making it more expressive and nuanced. They're particularly handy when it comes to giving advice. So, let's dive in and recap what we've learned about them. To refresh our memories, modal verbs are special verbs in English that are used to express various states or attitudes. When it comes to giving advice, we often use modal verbs like should, ought to, had better, and sometimes could. They help us to express advice in a more polite, diplomatic, or empathetic way. Now, let's take a quick look at some examples to remind ourselves how to use these modal verbs effectively. Should. This is perhaps the most common modal verb for advice. It suggests a good or ideal action, but does not imply any obligation. For instance, you should study for the exam. Ought to, very similar to should, ought to, expresses advice or expectation. For example, you ought to apologize. Had better. This modal verb is used to give advice about specific situations, especially when there's a sense of urgency or potential negative consequence. You had better leave now, or you'll miss your bus. Could. While could is most often used to indicate possibility, it can also be used to make gentle suggestions. You could try this new method. Remember, the choice of modal verb can influence how your advice is received. Should and ought to imply a strong recommendation, while could and might are softer and more gentle. Had better, meanwhile, carries a subtle warning of bad consequences if the advice isn't heeded. That's a wrap on our review of modal verbs for advice. These are powerful tools in your English language arsenal. With practice, you'll find it easier to select the right modal verb for every situation, making your communication clearer and more effective. I hope this recap has been helpful and that you'll join us in the next episode as we continue to explore the fascinating world of English grammar. Until then, keep practicing and happy learning.